Grove Unleashed.
Hey, welcome to another edition, not rendition, edition of Grove Unleashed. I am State Representative Seth Grove. Glad to join you. Speaking of rendition, Anders is here. He has not been renditioned by the CIA or anybody that I know of. Hi, Anders.
They're probably looking at my search history, but other than that, every time I pull up something sketchy online, I'm always just like, chill out, FBI man, it's none of your business. Don't worry about it.
And of course, Chuck. Hi, how are you?
I'm in the house.
In his house.
And you have to be in this place.
Right.
Otherwise, you might be accused of not achieving anything.
Right, because not a lot has happened.
Or a lot has happened that achieved nothing.
Right. We moved a lot of bills out of the House that went to the Senate and died. I think we have maybe 13 bills signed into law at this point. You know, even under Governor Wolf, we had 50 to 80 between the years. Like it's been an epic failure of getting stuff done.
Bad governance altogether.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
And it's really just a lack of keeping your word on, what a lot from the Democrat side started off with Mark Rossi not keeping his word, and then it seems like the trend is just continuing down the road here, and
it's a trend.
It's a trend. Yeah,
it's a problem.
It's a feature.
Right.
It's one of the things that we love here about governance in Pennsylvania.
Right.
But, of course, we're playing inside baseball here. We're talking, of course, about the budget negotiations and what happens. What happened and what happens when there's no budget.
Right. So, number one, some fun stuff we've done is, number one, we have a budget impasse clock. Because, believe it or not, we are under a budget impasse. I know there's some media reports that said a budget has passed. A budget has passed both chambers, but there's this process that's required that a bill needs signed both the House and the Senate. So the Senate has not signed the budget, so it's still in the House. And for the foreseeable future, the Senate's not coming back in to sign said budget. So we are at a full budget impasse. Think of Governor Wolf's first budget, line item veto, the entire budget, and we went until March without a budget. That is potentially going to transpire once again, mostly because the House Democrats threw a hissy fit over 0.2% of funding a $45.55 billion budget, $100 million for scholarships for kids in failing schools to go somewhere else.
And it just so happens that most of those students who are in those failing schools are in those same Democrat districts.
Right. You're talking about failing schools in Democrat areas and trying to help them and give them an opportunity to achieve economic success and success in their lives. And there's nothing more powerful than education to move a person out of poverty.
Absolutely. And the worst part is that the only single somewhat decent argument against school choice and against these lifeline scholarships is, it'll take money away from public schools, when this will not do that.
No, it doesn't.
This is
not at all.
Additional expenditure that does not take away from public education whatsoever.
0.2% of spending, and we don't have a budget because of that, because of special interest groups who fund Democrats, and Democrats were worried about primaries. We don't have a budget. And, long term, there's going to be problems for numerous entities. Short term, it's not going to be that bad. So school districts are sending out school property tax bills. They're sitting on billions in reserve funds. Most of them haven't spent all their COVID dollars. So a lot of school districts are sitting pretty. Some aren't. Some don't have large balances. So I don't want to highlight that. But most school districts are going to be good to go until after the new year. Nonprofits and probably counties are going to be the worse off on the budget impasse the longer it goes. The more their finances are going to go downhill. They're probably going to have to borrow money and stuff if it goes another 9 months or something like that. And that's basically the argument. One line item, $100 million, 0.2% of overall spending, led the entire Commonwealth to a screeching halt. After the governor fully endorsed campaign promise, we're going to do school vouchers. Went on Fox News, a month ago, saying all of God's children need the opportunity to educate themselves. I fully support Lifeline Scholarships voucher program, and here we are at a complete deadlock.
The deadlock, though, a deadlock that doesn't need to be happening right now,
right?
For a couple of reasons. One, it seems like we got this project, this whole process started late. And we were behind the 8 ball from Jump Street. We mentioned this on previous podcasts. Right. It's been a problem. But now that we're past the deadline, it seems like there's no good reason that we're not here negotiating. I
Right.
don't understand why we've reached this point. Yes, we're at an impasse, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't keep trying. It seems like the leadership in the Democrat-controlled House has said, we tried, and that's good enough, and we're going home.
Right, it's summer vacation, right? We're not late in September. They're not calling us back until late in September, end of September. We're barely in this fall. We're not in at all in December. 3 days in November, 2 days in September, like 6 days in October or something like that for full-time General Assembly. It's problematic on numerous fronts. And two, like I said, we're not getting bills signed into law. They're just passing stuff for the sake of passing it, and they're not negotiating with the Senate to get stuff done. So it must be frustrating for their members too, not seeing unless their goal is to just pass bills in the House. That's not going to change the any direction and benefit Pennsylvania whatsoever. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see how this takes shape from this point forward. And two, talk about a deal. You have Josh Shapiro going back on his promise. How do you ever trust even the House Democrats? How do you strike a deal and believe he's going to keep his word moving forward? It's problematic because that's all really I have. And I spoke about this on the floor on the passage of the budget, House Bill 611's General Appropriations Act. I basically said, how do you move forward knowing that one of your parties, when you have that handshake agreement, that's all you have in this business. You have the agreement that we agree to this and we will go execute it. And then someone turns their back on it. And on top of that, goes to the press and blames everybody else. How do you rebuild that trust moving forward? It's problematic on numerous fronts. And I've talked to a lot of people inside who've been here a long time, and they're very worried about that too. How do you get anything done in this atmosphere of complete mistrust after what happened? I call it the great betrayal.
It seems like it's just an absolute failure of leadership on both ends here, from both the House Democrats and with Governor Shapiro. I mean, Governor Shapiro can't get people in line to get 0.2% of the budget, something that small passed because of these special interest groups. It's completely ridiculous, and nobody knows what they're doing. It's insane.
Let's talk a little bit about who it's hurting in the long run about this. We've talked about short term what goes on, but in the long run, the people who are most in limbo are your public schools, your school district, especially the ones that are struggling the most, that have the least money, and the non-preferred colleges that are now not getting any state funding. We're basically saying, not we, the House Democrats, those who are refusing to negotiate and work on this right now, are saying, this doesn't matter to us right now.
Right. And to a point, let's talk about the non-preferreds. So when Governor Shapiro brought out his budget, he predicated that on a 7% increase to the non-preferreds. Non-preferreds are four universities in Pennsylvania: Penn State, Lincoln University, Temple University, and University of Pittsburgh. Those four institutions get direct funding, supposedly to lower student tuition. 3 out of the 4 in budget hearings in March said no matter what, they're raising taxes. You can give us 7%, the 7%, tuition. We're still raising tuition on students, no matter what. So no matter whether these passed or not, students were getting a tuition increase regardless. That is a fact, right? Penn State said they wouldn't. They have a meeting next week. I anticipate that they will be raising tuition as well. Whether these passed or not, whether they moved out of the House to the Senate, they still weren't getting done because it's part of the budget deal. So the budget that the Senate passed and the House passed, that's not signed into law yet, predicated those non-preferreds at flatlined, 0% increase. So now we have a major problem of what funding level are we talking about? Was it the deal that's no longer a deal? Are we renegotiating that? So you can't even pass them in a straight faith and say this is the final product, because it is not. It is still tied up with an unknown budget, right? On top of that, House Republicans has asked for basically 3 things. We want right to know, more transparency with these institutions. We want to know how and why they're spending money, and I think that the citizens have a right to know that, since they're putting over $600 million into these 4 institutions. We would like to see tuition freezes particularly if it's at 7%, they should be freezing tuition. If we're putting that much money into these, we should expect some form of tuition freeze. 3, we should fund based on student enrollment. All of these universities have had a decrease in enrollment, so there's a lot less need for student support. I understand costs go up. I understand how bad Biden inflation has been. That's a reality in our budget and our household budgets at the state level and in our households. But we went to Matt Bradford, the majority leader of the House, last time we were in session and said, we're asking for these 3 things. Could we put them in the bill? And he said flat out no. So if you're not negotiating with people you need votes from, and we're not asking for anything major, we're just asking for what the citizens of Pennsylvania want. Parents and students don't want to see tuition increase after tuition increase, particularly when you're putting over $500 million into these universities.
And that's supposed to be the trade-off too, right?
Right.
We'll give you money, make it cheaper for Pennsylvania residents.
Right.
That's supposed to be the trade-off, and it's not happening.
Right.
So if the state's not getting their return on investment, if the taxpayers aren't getting that return on investment, why should we continue to fund these institutions?
Right.
And it seems also that we're not asking for a whole heck of a lot here.
No.
It's we just want a couple of guide rails and a couple of if we're going to give you this much money, we want to know where this money, not all your money,
right,
this money is being spent.
Right.
And it doesn't seem to be that much to ask, and it makes you wonder what is the pushback with the other party. What is the pushback? Why do they not want to negotiate?
Right.
And also it makes you wonder, like this summer, why do they not want to come back in? Are they afraid to pass a bill?
Right.
What's going on?
I think it's right now it's just politics first. What we've seen from the majority party is we care more about political pandering and sending out emails, political emails and hit pieces. That's all they want to do. They're governing by talking point and politics. They're not governing based on the needs of Pennsylvania and so forth.
Putting this and their politics ahead of
right,
student performance,
correct,
ahead of the kids that are most needy in the school districts they serve.
Right. And we've been talking, House Republicans have been talking a long time about redoing the non-preferreds and giving it directly to students instead of institutions. That way it's going directly to the students. You don't need a 2/3 vote anymore for a non-preferred. You put it in the general appropriations bill, and then you fix the underlying problem. I mean, at the end of the day, there's competition in these systems. You're either going to sink or swim, right? You're either going to get and attract the students or you're not. And listen, there's less students going to college. So every university and every college is hurting right now on attracting students. You're going to have to find ways to attract them and get them in. Two, I think we need to refocus these. So when we send out FIA grants, that is our kind of state scholarship. We give students tuition dollars to help offset costs across the board. That's only good for 4 years. And it's literally by credit, too, just in case you're a part-time student. So you still get the same amount, whether you're going 8 years or whatever, but it's for a total 4 years, 60 credits, right? These institutions should be doing the same thing. They shouldn't be giving tuition breaks after year 4. There should be incentive to get done in 4 years for a 4-year degree. Year 5 and 6 are a leading cause of student debt in this country. And these universities are responsible for that, to make sure kids get out in 4 years. Do what it takes to get them out in 4 years. Give them the incentive. So that money should be actually geared toward your first 4 years. 5 and 6, give them out-of-state tuition. Line it up. Get them out in 4 years.
And this is why we need some of the oversight in these colleges, right, because sometimes they'll basically set up a degree program where they only offer some of the classes needed every 3 or 4 years. So if you don't catch it there, you're in school for another 3 or 4 years until that class is offered again. We need to incentivize these schools to get the kids out.
And here's a good example, right? So we have independent colleges and universities. 51% of college students from Pennsylvania go to an independent college and university. 51%. You know how much money they get from the state direct funding? $5 million.
Oh, okay.
$5 million.
So 1% of what the state preferreds are getting?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And they're competitive. They have in-state tuition. They have out-of-state tuition. They give those breaks to kids. I went to your college. I went to an independent university college, right? I had in-state tuition. and it's discounted rate. Like whatever price point is on there, it's actually lower. They actually lower it from that. So they're able to manage. You know, the big question is, why are we putting these dollars when we know 51% of our students go somewhere else and get zero benefit from the state, basically?
They're coming out of college with more college debt
Right.
than most places else in the United States
Right.
for other students to go to. You know, these students are not getting that return on investment. I keep going back to that.
Right.
You know, what's the return on investment of us funneling this much
and
money into these
we can't
universities?
keep up with their cost structure. That's the
Yeah.
other problem. Like, if you give us more money, we'll lower tuition. Well, we don't control your costs. Like, if you want to build, like, let's look at LSU, University of Arizona. They built these massive pool complexes. LSU has a lazy river shaped like LSU to attract students. Are we responsible to fund those decisions at the state to keep up with those cost structures? No, it's insane to think that, you know, it's our fault for not giving them more money when they are spending far and above what it normally costs just to educate kids. Because, I mean, ultimately they're trying to attract kids, so they're trying to find more amenities and nicer student housing and all this stuff. But it comes at a cost. We are not capable, taxpayers are not capable of subsidizing all of that cost.
Nor should they be.
Correct. And that's a conversation you have to have.
So this is all, it seems like all the things that you're talking about here are all based on marketing, right? Trying to market towards students. Yet these same Democrats are mad at cyber schools for wanting to put a small amount of money towards advertising for their cyber school.
Right.
And they're super mad about that.
Right.
The logic doesn't make sense at all.
It never does, never will. And to an extent, like, they're mostly mad because superintendents and school board members see what they pay the charter schools, because they take a percentage of their money. The money follows the kid. It's a voucher program, right? And they view it as their money. It's taxpayer money, number one. It's all taxpayer money. It's not their money. The money state government spends is not our money. It's a taxpayer's money. You need to respect that. You need to respect some taxpayers don't want to go to your school for whatever reason. But it also provides you an opportunity to do better. Figure out why your kids are leaving and do it better to bring them in. So there is a benefit if you take on that challenge. There's a benefit to that. And two, school districts hand their residents a bill every year in school property taxes, and that ticks off a lot of people when they get their property tax bill. It's the same concept.
Just paid mine.
Right. It's the same concept. You know, what ticks you off also ticks off your homeowners, and the response there is it's a public service, it's a public good, you got to pay your bill. Well, cyber charter schools are a public service, they're a public good, you got to pay your bill.
If you're not doing your job to educate these kids to the point where the parents want to take those kids out and into somewhere else,
Or need to because the school is so bad.
Yeah.
Right.
Failing schools.
Right. It is what it is. Now, take up the challenge, right? And a lot of schools have done that. They've taken up the challenge to try to bring these kids and offer them opportunity to succeed in their school. That is what you're supposed to be doing, which is good. But, and again, I'm not saying there doesn't need reforms in the cyber charter school in the charter school area. There absolutely does. But the bill we had in front of us that pulls $422 million out of cyber charter, like the goal is to not put anybody out of business. And that's how the Democrats are kind of failing the charge and trying to figure out how to do cyber charter.
And I assume that it's all because of these teachers unions, where in reality, teachers unions, a lot of people hear, teachers unions, they think, they know what's best for the kids. They know what's best for these schools. When in reality, the only people that they represent are the teachers.
Yeah, the
and
teachers might know what's
administrators.
best. The union probably.
Exactly. So, all they want is better pay for these. Like, it's, this is going to be bad for the institution. When I think one of the biggest things Republicans are focusing on right now is we need to stop worrying so much about funding institutions and funding these children's education instead.
Right. And the funny part is there's been unionization of cyber charter school teachers. So how does that work if PSEA has a union contract with some cyber charter schools and they're supporting a bill that eliminates their funding? Like, where are those like, I would decertify tomorrow.
Yeah.
It seems like this is certainly a debate that needs to be had. And that's what is being avoided this summer on the House floor.
Right.
The House Democrats control the schedule right now.
Correct.
This is just procedurally, we have nothing we can do.
Right.
Here.
They control the committees. They school what's voted on. They will remove amendments they don't want to put their members up to. Like, they control everything, and we have no option to bring up. They changed the rules, so there's no opportunity for us to bring anything up by design. So it is 100% on them. The reason the budget's not done, the reason non-preferreds are not done, the reason we don't have, we only have, 12 bills signed into law, the reason we don't have good legislation on transparency and oversight and program integrity, making sure only dollars for the most vulnerable are going to them and fraudsters are out of the system. The reason all those things aren't happening is because of House Democrats.
Grove Unleashed.